Edie? Are your fingers numb in your right hand? And having enormous headaches in your head?
Yes.
Reach your hands out. Reach your hand out to me.
Yes.
Reach the fingers out that are bothering you. Now, is the pain gone?
This is Jim Jones, a man who promised his followers a perfect life. Over 900 people believed in him, and he led all of them to their death. What started as a dream of equality and peace slowly turned into horror, ending in one of the largest mass deaths in modern history. Jim Jones was born on May 13, 1931, in a small town called Crede, Indiana. He grew up in a working-class family. His father, James Thurman Jones, was a World War I veteran. After the war, he struggled with his health and couldn't hold down a steady job. He was often described as a distant figure in Jim's life. His mother, Lynetta Putnam, worked various odd jobs over the years to help support the family. She was described as a strong, outspoken woman who reportedly believed Jim was destined for greatness. From a young age, Jim was different. Neighbors remembered his strange interest in death and funerals. He would hold little ceremonies for dead animals and spent much of his time alone, reading about politics, religion, and death. He was a lonely boy, but with a craving for importance, power, and influence. Jim Jones was also drawn to churches of every kind, studying the way pastors spoke. He loved the idea of standing before a devoted audience. As he got older, his interests expanded into politics and social justice. He advocated against racism and admired figures like Martin Luther King. He began to shape his image as a bold revolutionary preacher. At the time, Indiana was really racially segregated, and Jim Jones used his platform to preach integration. At a time when many white pastors refused to welcome black members, Jones opened his church, the People's Temple, to everyone. He started food programs, housing assistance, and free clinics, especially for poor black families. He fought against racist policies, spoke out in public meetings, and even adopted several non-white children with his wife, Marceline Jones, creating one of Indiana's first racially integrated families. To the outside world, he looked like a brave, compassionate leader. The People's Temple, founded in Indiana in 1955, began as a small church preaching equality and justice. Jim Jones attracted followers by offering free meals, housing assistance, and medical care to the poor, elderly, and marginalized groups. Many were drawn in by his charisma and promises of a better, more just society. But by the mid-1960s, Jones' message began to take a darker turn. He grew increasingly paranoid about the state of the world, frequently warning his followers of an imminent nuclear apocalypse. Jones announced that the People's Temple would need to relocate to a safer place, somewhere he claimed would be a nuclear safe zone. In 1965, Jim Jones moved the People's Temple to California. On the outside, it still seemed like a welcoming place for people who felt left out by society. But behind closed doors, a much darker story was unfolding. Rumors started to spread about Jones' controlling and manipulative behavior. He demanded complete loyalty from his followers and forced them to cut ties with family and friends who weren't part of the church. Anyone who spoke out or questioned him was publicly humiliated in meetings. Some were beaten, threatened, or made to confess things they didn't do. Jones also claimed he had special powers. He told his followers he could heal the sick, read minds, and see into the future. Many believed him, too afraid to doubt his word. Despite this, the church kept growing. By the 1970s, the People's Temple had new locations in San Francisco and Los Angeles. Jones' power and influence kept growing. In public, he still spoke about civil rights and helping the poor. He even made friends with important politicians and celebrities. But behind the scenes, the People's Temple had become a dangerous, isolated cult ruled by a man who believed he was a god. In 1974, believing he could create a perfect society without racism or government control, Jim Jones leased a land in South American country of Guyana. He called it Jonestown, a promised paradise deep in the jungle. By 1977, facing media scrutiny and legal problems in the US, Jones led hundreds of his followers there, claiming it would be a utopia free from oppression. At first, life in Jonestown seemed full of hope. The people who followed Jim Jones worked together to build homes, farms, schools, and clinics. They shared everything they had and believed they were creating a better, fairer world. Families ate together, children played together, and for a while it felt like a fresh start. But it didn't stay that way for long. Slowly, things began to change. Jones made strict new rules, and people were no longer allowed to freely contact family or friends outside Jonestown. Letters were read before being sent, and visits from outsiders were rarely allowed. Jones' need for control grew stronger every day. He spoke for hours about enemies who wanted to destroy them and warned of a coming disaster. Food started running low, and people were forced to work from sunrise to sunset in the hot, humid jungle. Sleep was hard to come by, as followers were often ordered to attend long, late night meetings. At these meetings, Jones would shout about conspiracies, enemies, and the dangers of leaving Jonestown. Anyone who questioned him or tried to escape was punished. What had once seemed like a peaceful, hopeful community had turned into a place of fear and suffering. Jim Jones at this point was also heavily addicted to drugs and alcohol, making him more paranoid and unstable. He even forced people to take drugs to make them easier to control. His speeches also grew darker and darker. One of his scariest tactics was the White Nights. These were practice drills for mass suicide, where followers pretended to drink poison on his command. These events kept everyone in constant fear. In 1978, families in the United States grew worried about their loved ones in Jonestown. Many hadn't heard from them in months and feared something was wrong. They asked the U.S. government for help. In response, Congressman Leo Ryan decided to visit Jonestown. He brought a group of reporters and other officials with him to see what was really happening. Jim Jones knew that U.S. officials were coming, so he carefully prepared his people. He told them to smile, act happy, and say good things about Jonestown. When Congressman Leo Ryan and his group arrived, everything looked peaceful. The visitors saw smiling faces, people singing songs, clean homes, and a well kept farms. Jones made sure they only saw what he wanted them to see, hoping to convince them that life in Jonestown was perfect. But as the day went on, some brave followers secretly passed notes to the visitors, begging for help. They wrote that they were being abused and wanted to leave. A few even spoke directly to Congressman Ryan, asking him to take them back to the United States. It soon became clear that the happy, peaceful life in Jonestown was all a lie. Behind the forced smiles were people living in fear, too afraid to speak out until now. Leo Ryan did confront Jim Jones about his concerns. He told Jones that some people wanted to leave and go back to the United States with him. Jones pretended to stay calm and said people were free to leave if they wanted. But inside, he was angry and afraid because he was losing control of his followers. Later that evening, during a big meeting in a pavilion, Leo Ryan spoke in front of everyone. He asked if anyone wanted to leave with him. A few people stood up, and this made Jones furious. In that moment, it became clear to everyone that his control over the people was falling apart. This set off a chain of terrible events that would lead to the tragic ending the next day. The congressman, the other visitors, and about 15 people who decided to leave thought everything was fine and that they were safe. But what they didn't know was that Jim Jones wasn't going to let them go without a fight. He secretly sent his armed guards to follow them. As the group was getting ready to board the planes at the airstrip, the guards suddenly opened fire. It was total chaos. People screamed, ran, and tried to duck and hide from the flying bullets. Sadly, some people were hit. Congressman Leo Ryan, three journalists, and one of the defectors were killed. Several others were seriously wounded. Back in Jonestown, after hearing about the shooting at the airstrip, Jim Jones knew the end had come. He gathered all of his followers in the main pavilion, calling for an emergency meeting. His voice was calm but filled with dread as he told them there was no escape, claiming that the US government would soon come to punish them all. He called it the time for a revolutionary suicide, saying it was better to die together than to be captured. Large tubes of cyanide laced grape flavored drinks were prepared, along with syringes filled with the poison for those too young to drink it themselves. Mothers were ordered to give the deadly mixture to their children first. Some begged for their children's lives, others screamed and cried, but armed guards surrounded the pavilion, watching closely, ready to kill anyone who refused. One by one, men and women stepped forward to drink the poison. In total, over 900 people died that day, including nearly 300 children. In the end, Jim Jones was found dead with a gunshot wound to the head, believed to be self inflicted. The utopia he once promised had become a mass grave deep in the jungle. What started as a dream of justice and peace ended in horror and tragedy. Jim Jones' story is a haunting reminder of how power can corrupt and how dangerous it is to place your faith in one man.